General Marcus Thornfield glanced at the young sergeant cleaning her rifle and muttered to his aide, "Support personnel shouldn't be handling precision weapons. Send her back to communications." 47 minutes later, 3 high-value targets lay dead at distances exceeding 200 meters, their convoy destroyed by shots that military doctrine deemed impossible. The same Barrett 201 he'd dismissed as too much rifle for a radio operator had just rewritten the tactical manual for extreme long-range engagement. Want to know what happened when this underestimated communications specialist proved that physics doesn't care about your job title? Hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez adjusted the bipod legs on her Barrett 201 for the 3rd time that morning, her movements precise and economical. The Afghan sun hadn't yet reached its brutal midday intensity, but heat shimmer was already beginning to rise from the rocky terrain below forward operating base Wolverine. At 28 years old, Elena had spent 6 years in the Army, officially assigned to the 25th Infantry Division's Communications Section. Her personnel file listed her military occupational specialty as 25B, Information Technology Specialist. What the file didn't mention was her childhood in Montana, where her father, a former Marine Scout sniper, had taught her to shoot prairie dogs at 800 yards with a .308 Winchester before she turned 16. It didn't document the countless hours she'd spent calculating ballistic trajectories while other kids played video games, or the way her steel-gray eyes could track movement across vast distances that left others squinting uselessly. "Vasquez, what the hell are you doing with that 50 cal?" Master Sergeant Rodriguez approached with his usual scowl, coffee mug in hand. "That weapon's assigned to our designated marksman team. Just performing daily maintenance, Master Sergeant," Elena replied, not looking up from her cleaning rod. "Sergeant Thompson asked me to give it a thorough cleaning while he's on leave." Rodriguez grunted, unconvinced. "You even know how to fire that thing?" "It's not a damn M4. Elena's fingers never paused in their methodical disassembly of the bolt carrier group. "I'm familiar with the system, Master Sergeant. Barrett 201, semi-automatic anti-material rifle, 50 BMG caliber, effective range approximately 800 meters against personnel targets, 0 meters against equipment." "Book knowledge," Rodriguez muttered. But he seemed satisfied enough to wander off toward the communications bunker. The truth was considerably more complex. Elena had qualified expert on every weapon system the Army had put in her hands, but her superiors consistently assigned her to support roles. Her slight 5'4" frame and quiet demeanor apparently didn't fit their mental image of a combat soldier. She'd learned to keep her true capabilities to herself, understanding that demonstration was more powerful than declaration. The FOB's Tactical Operations Center buzzed with activity as intelligence reports filtered in throughout the morning. Elena monitored the radio traffic while ostensibly maintaining equipment, her trained ear picking up details that others missed. A high-value target package had been identified approximately 15 kilometers northwest of their position. 3 Taliban commanders responsible for coordinating IED attacks along the main supply route. Captain James Morrison, the company commander, briefed his senior NCOs on the developing situation. "Intelligence indicates these targets will be moving through the Sherzad Valley this afternoon. Drone surveillance confirms a 3-vehicle convoy. Expected time of arrival at checkpoint Alpha 7 is 1,430 hours." Elena checked her watch. 1,247 hours. The convoy would pass through a bottleneck in the valley where the road curved around a massive boulder formation. Perfect terrain for interdiction, if you had the right weapon system and the skills to use it effectively. "Sir," interrupted First Sergeant Williams, "our sniper team is still at battalion for advanced training. Won't be back until tomorrow evening." Morrison frowned, studying the topographical maps spread across the planning table. "What about the 50 cal? Can we position it for area denial?" "Negative, sir," Williams replied. "The distance is too extreme. We're talking about shots in excess of 30 meters. Even with the Barrett, maximum effective range against personnel is 1,800 meters. Elena continued her radio checks, but her mind was already calculating wind speed, elevation differences, and Coriolis effect. 3,000 meters wasn't impossible. It was just improbable for most shooters. The atmospheric conditions were nearly perfect. Temperature holding steady at 78 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity at 23%, barometric pressure at 29.85 inches of mercury. Wind speed at ground level was minimal, maybe 3-4 miles per hour from the southwest. She'd made similar shots during family hunting trips in the Rockies, though never in combat conditions. The physics remained the same. Bullet drop at 200 meters would be approximately 2.7 feet, requiring elevation adjustment of roughly 98 minutes of angle. Wind drift would be minimal given the light breeze, but she'd need to account for the Coriolis effect. The Earth's rotation would push her bullet approximately 4.2 inches to the right at that distance. "Vasquez," Rodriguez called from across the operations center. "Grab your radio gear. We're establishing an observation post on Hill 247 to provide overwatch for the convoy interdiction attempt." Elena nodded, gathering her communications equipment. Hill 247 offered an elevated position with clear lines of sight across the Sherzad Valley. More importantly, it was approximately 200 meters from the road junction where intelligence expected the enemy convoy to pause before continuing toward the village. As she loaded her gear into the Humvee, Elena made a decision that would change everything. Along with her official communications equipment, she quietly loaded the Barrett Matey 201 and 3 magazines of match-grade 2A2 50 BMG ammunition. If the opportunity presented itself, she intended to be ready. The ride to Hill 247 took 43 minutes, bouncing over rocky terrain that would have challenged a mountain goat. Elena used the time to review meteorological data and refine her ballistic calculations, all while maintaining radio communications with the main base. Her fellow soldiers assumed she was simply performing her assigned duties as a communications specialist. They had no idea they were riding with someone who could place a 50 caliber bullet through a dinner plate at distances that challenged the laws of physics. By 1,415 hours, Elena had established the communications relay on Hill 247's rocky summit, her radio equipment providing crystal-clear contact with FOB Wolverine. The observation post commanded a magnificent view of the Sherzad Valley, its ancient caravan route snaking between towering cliff faces toward the Pakistani border. Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "Overwatch 7. This is Wolverine. 6. Drone surveillance confirms 3 vehicles approaching checkpoint. Alpha 7. ETA. Approximately 10 minutes. Elena keyed her handset. Wolverine 6. Overwatch 7. Copy 3 vehicles. ETA 10 minutes. Maintaining surveillance. Beside her, Specialist Jenkins adjusted his spotting scope and whistled softly. "Damn, Sergeant 5. That's a hell of a long way down there. Must be over 2 miles easy." 3,200 meters, Elena corrected, having already ranged the distance with her laser rangefinder. Give or take 20 meters, the Barrett Matey 201 lay partially concealed beneath a camouflage tarp, its bipod legs extended and locked. Elena had positioned the weapon system during their initial setup, using the pretense of establishing optimal radio antenna placement. The rifle's muzzle pointed toward the road junction below, though she'd been careful to keep it hidden from casual observation. At 1,427 hours, the convoy appeared, 3 Toyota Hilux pickup trucks moving in tactical formation. Through her binoculars, Elena could identify the vehicle's occupants, bearded men in traditional Afghan dress, several carrying AK-47s and RPGs. The lead vehicle mounted a PKM machine gun, its gunner scanning the surrounding terrain for threats. Wolverine. 6. Overwatch. 7. Elena transmitted. Visual contact with 3-vehicle convoy, approaching checkpoint Alpha 7. Estimated 6 to 9 personnel, mixed small arms and crew, served weapons. Morrison's response carried obvious frustration. Copy. Overwatch. 7. Maintain surveillance and report movement. We have no effective means of engagement at that distance. Elena watched through her scope as the convoy slowed, then stopped at the road junction. Perfect. The vehicles had positioned themselves exactly where her ballistic calculations had predicted, a natural choke point where the terrain forced them to consolidate before continuing toward their destination. Sir, she keyed her radio again. Request permission to attempt engagement with available assets. A long pause. Then Morrison's voice tinged with skepticism. Overwatch. 7. Clarify your intended method of engagement. Elena took a deep breath. Barrett Mady. 2 Awone. Precision fire at extended range. The radio crackled with overlapping voices as multiple personnel tried to respond simultaneously. Finally, Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Negative. Overwatch. 7. That's beyond maximum effective range. No point in wasting ammunition on impossible shots. Sir, environmental conditions are optimal. Temperature 78 degrees, humidity 23%, wind minimal from the southwest at 3 miles per hour. Barometric pressure is steady at 29.85 inches of mercury. First Sergeant Williams' voice joined the conversation. Vasquez. That's over 3,000 meters. The ballistic tables don't even calculate drops at that distance for anti-personnel work. Elena had already calculated the exact requirements. Elevation adjustment of 98.3 minutes of angle. Windage adjustment of 2.1 minutes right. To compensate for the light crosswind and Coriolis effect. The bullet would require approximately 4.7 seconds to reach the target, dropping 32.8 feet during flight, and following a parabolic arc that would challenge every fundamental principle most soldiers understood about marksmanship. Sir, I've run the calculations. Elena replied calmly. Physics and applied mathematics. The shot is feasible given current atmospheric conditions. Captain Morrison's sigh was audible over the radio. Vasquez, I appreciate your confidence, but we're talking about mathematical impossibilities here. Even our best designated marksman wouldn't attempt a shot beyond 500 meters. Through her spotting scope, Elena watched the enemy convoy. The vehicles remained stationary at the junction, their occupants dismounted and apparently conducting some kind of planning session. 3 men stood clustered around the lead vehicle's hood, obviously examining maps or documents. High-value targets presenting perfect firing solutions at a measured distance of 247 meters. Wolverine 6. Targets remain stationary at checkpoint Alpha 7. Request permission to engage. Negative. Overwatch. 7. Maintain observation only. Elena studied the tactical situation with growing frustration. The enemy convoy would resume movement within minutes, continuing toward the village where they'd disappear into a maze of compounds and civilian populations. This represented the perfect opportunity for interdiction, clear fields of fire, positive target identification, minimal risk of collateral damage. Sir, she transmitted again. With respect, the probability calculations change significantly when you factor in specialized training and optimal environmental conditions. Master Sergeant Rodriguez's voice cut in. Vasquez, you're a communications specialist, not Annie Oakley. Stay in your lane. The dismissive tone sparked something cold and determined in Elena's chest. She'd spent 6 years listening to similar comments, watching opportunities slip away because her superiors couldn't see beyond her official job description. But this was different. 3 high-value targets sat exposed at a measured distance that fell well within her personal capabilities, if not within the Army's standard doctrine. "Sir, requesting permission to demonstrate feasibility with a single proof-of-concept shot." Morrison's response came after a long pause. "Sergeant Vasquez, the Barrett Matey. 201 has a maximum effective range of 800 meters against personnel targets. You're talking about nearly double that distance. The bullet drop alone would be 32.8 feet, sir, requiring 98.3 minutes of angle elevation adjustment." Silence on the radio. Then Williams's voice. "How the hell do you know that calculation off the top of your head?" Elena pulled the camouflage tarp away from the Barrett, its massive bulk gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Jenkins stared at the weapon, then at Elena, understanding beginning to dawn in his expression. "Because I've made similar shots before, First Sergeant. Different circumstances, same physics." The radio erupted with overlapping transmissions as multiple personnel tried to speak simultaneously. Elena ignored the chatter, focusing instead on the mechanical precision required for extreme long-range marksmanship. She settled behind the Barrett's stock, adjusting the bipod height and checking her scope's zero against known reference points in the valley below. Finally, Morrison's voice cut through the radio noise. All stations, maintain radio discipline. Overwatch, 7. Explain your background with precision marksmanship." Elena made her final scope adjustments, the crosshairs settling on the lead target's center mass. "Sir, my father was a Marine Scout sniper. I've been shooting extended ranges since I was 16 years old." "And you never mentioned this because?" "Because nobody ever asked, sir." Elena chambered a round of match-grade 50 BMG ammunition, the Barrett's action cycling with mechanical precision. Through her Leopold Mark IV scope, set at 16x magnification, the enemy personnel appeared as clear, distinct figures, despite the incredible distance. The lead target, a bearded man in traditional Afghan dress examining documents, spread across the vehicle's hood, remained motionless at exactly 247 meters. "Wolverine 6, Overwatch 7, Elena transmitted, her voice steady and professional. "I have positive identification on 3 high-value targets. Requesting final authorization to engage." The radio remained silent for nearly 30 seconds. Finally, Morrison's voice. "Overwatch 7. You are authorized to attempt 1 proof-of-concept shot. If you miss, we abort and maintain observation only." Elena adjusted her scope's elevation turret to 98.3 minutes of angle, the mechanical clicks echoing across the rocky summit. Windage adjustment, 2.1 minutes right. The afternoon air remained remarkably stable, with only the slightest thermal shimmer visible through her optic. "Copy, Wolverine 6. 1 shot. Proof of concept." She settled into her firing position, left hand supporting the rifle's forestock, right cheek welded to the stock's comb. The Barrett's 29-inch barrel extended far beyond the bipod, its muzzle brake designed to redirect propellant gases and reduce felt recoil. Elena's breathing slowed to the deliberate rhythm her father had taught her 2 decades earlier. Breathe in, breathe out, half breath in, hold, squeeze. The crosshairs settled on the lead target's upper torso. At 247 meters. Even the slightest movement would translate to significant point-of-impact shift. Elena's trigger finger found Barrett's 2-stage trigger, taking up the slack with steady pressure. "Shot out," she whispered, more to herself than to the radio. The Barrett's report was thunderous, its massive muzzle brake directing concussive blast sideways across the hilltop. The rifle's recoil drove straight back into Elena's shoulder, the weapon's weight and design absorbing most of the 50 BMG cartridge's tremendous energy. Through her scope, she watched the vapor trail of the 750-grain match bullet arcing across the valley. Flight time: 4.73 seconds. The bullet struck the target's center mass, its impact visible, even at extreme range as the man crumpled instantly. The tremendous kinetic energy of the 50 BMG projectile, still carrying over 400 foot-pounds at impact despite the distance, produced results that were immediately apparent to everyone watching. "Holy shit," Jenkins breathed, staring through his spotting scope. "You actually hit him." Elena was already working the Barrett's bolt, chambering a second round as the remaining targets scattered toward cover. The convoy's reaction was predictable. 2 men diving behind the lead vehicle, while a third sprinted toward the second Toyota pickup. "Target down," Elena reported calmly. "Engaging second target." The running man presented a more challenging shot, his movement adding complexity to an already difficult firing solution. Elena tracked his movement through her scope, calculating lead time and adjusted point of aim. At 247 meters, the bullet would require 4.73 seconds to reach the target, enough time for a running man to cover approximately 15 meters. She led the target by the calculated distance and squeezed the trigger. The second shot's impact was equally devastating, the running figure stumbling and falling as the massive bullet found its mark. 2 confirmed kills at a distance that challenged every principle of conventional marksmanship doctrine. The radio exploded with excited chatter from multiple stations. Elena ignored the noise, focusing instead on the tactical situation developing below. The third target had reached cover behind the second vehicle, but his position remained exposed from her elevated angle. She had clear sight lines to his concealment, and the Barrett's 50 BMG ammunition would penetrate the Toyota's light sheet metal without difficulty. "Engaging third target behind Vehicle 2, Elena transmitted, settling her crosshairs on the visible portion of the man's position. This shot required precise placement to account for the vehicle's interference and the target's partial concealment. Elena adjusted her point of aim, factoring in the bullet's trajectory and the need to penetrate intervening obstacles. The third shot punched through the pickup truck's door panel and found its intended target. Through her scope, Elena confirmed the kill before scanning for additional threats. The convoy's remaining personnel had apparently fled into the surrounding terrain, leaving 3 vehicles and multiple weapons abandoned at the road junction. "Wolverine, 6, Overwatch, 7, Elena reported, her voice maintaining the same calm professionalism. 3 confirmed kills at 3,247 meters. Targets neutralized. Convoy destroyed. No additional enemy personnel visible in the immediate area. The radio remained silent for nearly a minute. Then Morrison's voice, tinged with amazement. "Overwatch, 7. Confirmed 3 kills at over 3,000 meters. Confirmed, sir. 3 high-value targets eliminated with 3 rounds fired. Time on target: approximately 90 seconds from initial engagement authorization." Elena engaged the Barrett's safety and began her post-engagement procedures, recording ammunition expenditure and tactical results. 3 rounds of match-grade 50 BMG ammunition had eliminated a high-value target package that conventional military doctrine considered untouchable at such extreme range. Jenkins continued staring through his spotting scope, shaking his head in disbelief. "Sergeant V, that was... I've never seen anything like that. Those shots were mathematically impossible." Elena shrugged, beginning the process of cleaning Barrett's action. Physics, applied mathematics, and practice specialist. Same principles that govern any ballistic trajectory, just carried to their logical extreme. The helicopter extraction arrived 47 minutes later, its rotors churning dust clouds across Hill 247's rocky summit. As Elena packed the Barrett 8201 into its carrying case, she could hear excited radio chatter from the aircrew discussing the incredible shots they'd been briefed about during their approach flight. Captain Morrison met them at the FOB's landing zone, his expression a mixture of amazement and professional reassessment. "Sergeant Vasquez, I need a complete after-action report on your engagement. The battalion is asking for detailed ballistic data and methodology." "Of course, sir," Elena replied, shouldering her communications equipment alongside Barrett's case. "Standard engagement report format?" Morrison shook his head. "This is going well beyond standard reporting. Division headquarters wants a full technical analysis, including atmospheric conditions, ballistic calculations, and shot placement data. They're also requesting your complete training background and marksmanship qualifications." As they walked toward the operations center, Elena noticed the changed dynamics among her fellow soldiers. Conversations quieted as she passed, replaced by respectful nods and curious stares. Master Sergeant Rodriguez intercepted them halfway across the compound. "Vasquez," he said, his tone noticeably different from that morning's dismissiveness, "I owe you an apology, and probably a beer. Hell, probably several beers." Elena managed a slight smile. "Just doing my job, Master Sergeant. Your job as a communications specialist, not whatever the hell that was out there." Rodriguez gestured toward the Barrett case. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "Montana," Elena replied simply. "My father taught me the fundamentals when I was young. Everything else is just physics and applied mathematics." The debriefing lasted 3 hours, with personnel from Battalion S2 Intelligence and Division Marksmanship instructors participating via secure video conference. Elena walked them through each shot in meticulous detail. Environmental conditions, ballistic calculations, target acquisition and engagement sequence, ammunition performance, and tactical results. "Sergeant Vasquez," interrupted Lieutenant Colonel Hayes from Division, "your personnel file makes no mention of advanced marksmanship training. How do we account for this capability gap in our records?" "Sir, I never claimed advanced marksmanship training through military channels. My experience comes from civilian background prior to enlistment." Hayes frowned at his computer screen. "According to your entry documentation, you listed hunting as a recreational activity. Nothing about competitive shooting or long-range precision work." "Sir, the enlistment forms asked about hobbies, not professional capabilities. I hunted with my father in Montana. The distances we engaged were considerably longer than most people would consider normal for hunting applications." First Sergeant Williams leaned forward. "How much longer, Sergeant?" "We regularly took elk and mule deer at distances exceeding 200 meters, First Sergeant. Occasionally longer, when conditions permitted." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena had been conducting precision shots at ranges that exceeded most military marksmanship standards for over a decade, treating it as routine family hunting activities. Colonel Hayes cleared his throat. "Sergeant Vasquez, I'm recommending immediate reevaluation of your military occupational specialty. Your demonstrated capabilities suggest you're significantly underutilized in your current assignment." Elena maintained her professional composure, though she felt a surge of satisfaction at the belated recognition. "Sir, I'm willing to serve in whatever capacity the Army deems most effective." The official paperwork would take weeks to process, but the immediate changes were obvious. Elena found herself reassigned to the FOB's Tactical Operations Center, with temporary additional duties as senior marksmanship instructor for the company's designated marksman program. More importantly, her Barrett 8201 was officially assigned to her personal custody, along with a substantial allocation of match-grade ammunition. 3 days later, General Marcus Thornfield arrived at FOB Wolverine for a routine inspection tour. Elena was conducting morning equipment maintenance when the general's entourage passed through the weapons maintenance area. Thornfield paused at her workstation, his eyes drawn to the distinctive outline of the Barrett 8201. "Impressive weapons system," he commented casually. "Do we have qualified personnel to operate it effectively?" Elena looked up from her cleaning rod, meeting the general's eyes directly. "Yes, sir. We have demonstrated capability at extended ranges." Thornfield's aide whispered something in his ear, and the general's expression shifted dramatically. He studied Elena with new interest, his gaze moving to the marksmanship badges on her uniform, including the newly added long-range precision badge that documented her verified 200-meter engagement. "You're the communications sergeant who made those impossible shots," he said, recognition dawning. "Just doing my job, sir." The general stared at her for a long moment, then at the Barrett, then back at Elena. "Sergeant, I believe I owe you an apology, and perhaps a conversation about proper utilization of exceptional talent." Elena continued cleaning her rifle, maintaining the same calm professionalism that had characterized her service for 6 years. "No apology necessary, sir. Sometimes capabilities aren't immediately apparent." 2 weeks later, Elena received orders reassigning her to the Army Marksmanship Unit at Fort Benning, with additional temporary duty at the Special Operations Command. Her new assignment would involve developing advanced long-range engagement doctrines and training select personnel in extreme distance precision shooting techniques. The morning before her departure, Elena conducted her final equipment inventory at FOB Wolverine. Master Sergeant Rodriguez approached with a cup of coffee and a thoughtful expression. "Vasquez, I've been thinking about that day on Hill 247. You never seemed surprised by what you accomplished, like you always knew you could make those shots." Elena secured Barrett's case and checked her gear manifest one final time. "I was reasonably confident in the ballistic calculations, Master Sergeant. That's not what I mean." Rodriguez studied her carefully. "You weren't proving anything to yourself out there. You were proving it to us." Elena shouldered her pack and picked up the Barrett case, preparing for the helicopter that would carry her to the next phase of her military career. "Sometimes people need to see capability demonstrated before they can recognize it exists, Master Sergeant. And sometimes," Rodriguez replied with a wry smile, "generals need to walk past a rifle before they notice the person holding it." Elena's departure from FOB Wolverine marked the end of her assignment as an underestimated communications specialist, and the beginning of her recognition as one of the Army's most capable precision marksmen. The Barrett 8201, that had been dismissed as too much rifle for a radio operator, had instead become the instrument of tactical innovation that would influence military doctrine for years to come. The 3 shots fired from Hill 247 remained classified at the highest levels, their details restricted to personnel with specific operational need to know. But within the small community of military precision shooters, the engagement became legendary, proof that exceptional capability often exists in unexpected places, waiting only for the right circumstances to reveal itself. Elena Vasquez had spent 6 years being overlooked and underestimated, assigned to support roles that failed to utilize her extraordinary talents. But physics and applied mathematics don't respect organizational prejudices or institutional assumptions. When the moment came to demonstrate what was possible at the absolute limits of ballistic science, she was ready. The general who had walked past her Barrett 50 without a second glance learned an important lesson that day. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the quiet one cleaning the rifle in the corner, calculating impossible shots, while everyone else assumes she's just following orders. Subscribe if you believe that true capability often hides in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to prove that impossible is just another word for not yet attempted.